What do CEOs need to know about sales these days? A lot. Outdated sales strategies and tactics plague most companies today. Listen to what innovative CEOs and experts have to say about how to change all that with Sales Talk for CEOs. Welcome to Sales Talk for CEOs, and thanks so much for helping me grow my YouTube following. It's pretty exciting to see more and more people watching the shorts and the full show as well. Today's guest has spent 18 years transforming the way investment firms scale. He's helped clients raise over $40 billion. Now, he does this in two ways, and I'm going to let him tell you more about it. But he actually puts together a sales team for these firms and does the selling for them, or gives them a database of all the right people to call so their own sales teams can do it. So pretty exciting to have this guest on the show today. Welcome, Guy.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Alice.
Hey, so tell us a little more in your own words about exactly what Dakota does.
Sure. So in 2006, we were formed as a third-party marketer. They call it in the investment industry parlance, where really what that means is investment firms have kind of two choices as it relates to sales and distribution of their investment strategies, which means raising capital for their funds. And they can either hire people in-house and become W-2 employees, or they can outsource it to a third party. In that case, that was us. And what's different about us is we really act as an extension of these investment firms. So we have a 9-person sales team plus 3 administrative teammates who basically handle all the sales and marketing for the most part for each one of our partners. And we act just like us as if we are employees. We take them to market and go out and raise capital for their funds. So that's business number one. And what we did is we built a database using Salesforce.com of all these institutional investors across the country. And in 2019, through some kind of crazy trials and tribulations of other stuff we were doing, we decided to commercialize that database, which means we took the Salesforce database and we turned it into a product. So now we have over 1,100 investment firms subscribed to that database, so their internal salespeople can use our data, if you will, to go out and set up meetings with potential institutional investors. And that's about 65 people, and the main business is about 12.
Wow, that is very powerful. And I think it's really nice sometimes for a company to outsource their sales, because then they can stay focused on what they're best at, right? And not worry about hiring and training and managing sellers. So I think that model is probably pretty attractive to a lot of these investment firms. All right, so you got this idea to do this. Let's go all the way back. It's been about 18 years. I know you were in real estate prior to this. How did you get the idea and how did you get started?
Well, the idea started with a product that I came up with a simple idea at the firm that I was with in 2005. They called it a fund of funds, and it was actually a real estate fund of funds. And the firm that I suggested it to, they almost wanted to do it, but then they said no. And so I ended up leaving and started it with my boss from that former firm. And when we were launching it in the fall of 2006, I went back up to New York City. We live in Philadelphia, and I'd interviewed at the firm the year prior, and they had a mutual fund, which was a strategy that was large cap growth stocks. And the founder said, hey, we just launched a mutual fund. Would you consider also raising capital for a mutual fund? So we had 2 products at that point, one third party, and the other was our own fund of funds. We did 2 fund of funds over the course of the next 3 years. And I've been with Edgewood Management, and our team has been with Edgewood Management since 2006, raising capital for that mutual fund. And then what ended up happening is Edgewood introduced us to a number of other firms that we work with today. And that's how it started, and it's blossomed into a really fun business.
So were you working for someone else, or were you independent doing real estate and sort of morphed into this?
No, I was completely a W-2 employee. I mean, the sad part is I graduated from college in 1989, and my kids just reminded me of this recently. I said, well, I really had like 8 jobs in those 17 years. They're like, Dad, walk us through the math just one more time. They're like, we just counted 14. Okay, 14 W-2. I'm like, okay, I had 14 jobs. And so I was always a W-2 employee. I'd tried a few startups, and I kind of did 18 months at these wonderful firms working for wonderful people. And I think I just always had an itch to do my own thing. And that's what really prompted the founding of Dakota.
All right. So did you give up your full-time gig before you dove into this, or how did that work?
1 billion% with 3 kids. Yes, 3 kids under 5. Yeah, it was pretty stressful. That first
Yeah.
2 years was incredibly stressful. It gets you up in the morning pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So was it just you in the beginning, or did you have a team of people
No,
that you
I had
started with?
one partner, and then Tracy Rogers, who's with us today, joined in '07. And then unfortunately, my partner and we split in the end of
Mm.
2009. So it's two of us to start.
Not unusual. All right. So you had some context to begin with, right? And I'm sure you worked your network, but really, where did those very first customers come from?
There were some really great investors that believed, because we, in our first product, we partnered with a real estate firm in Cleveland that was still is the largest institutional real estate consultant. So kind of the creme de la creme of a firm that could pick funds. That's what it was, a fund of funds, and they were the best at it. And so it allowed us to go out and market a product to give our investors access to this great firm in Cleveland and their investment expertise. And so it was a very sensible strategy, and it worked very well. We did 2 funds. And simultaneously, as I mentioned before, back in the fall of '06, we started marketing Edgewood Management, who we still work with today, which is somebody who you might have in your 401k plan. It's like a mutual fund like you'd have in your 401k plan that would be invested in growth stocks like Google or Amazon or companies like that.
So here you are with your partner, and you're working this network. You got this great company that you're going to work with. You're running the company, and you're doing the selling. And you also doing the selling for the fund that you
Yes,
brought on
everything.
as your
Oh, yeah.
customer?
Oh,
So
yeah.
you were.
We were the 2 primary salespeople, working really hard to get those initial dollars in to get the business off the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's just such a typical story with founders, right? You just have to really double or triple time it in the beginning because you're running the company, bringing in the customers, and doing the work, right, for those customers a lot of times as well. All right.
100%.
So as you grew, you started to get more customers from your network and the great work that you were doing. How did you decide to grow next? Like, how did you decide, oh gosh, it's time for a salesperson, or let's get some other people to fill in and do some of the other work so we can keep doing the selling? What went through your mind, and how did you do that?
Well, it took about 4 years of doing it kind of on our own. We did hire one salesperson to support us, Dan, who's with me still today. We had a little bit of a hiccup because Dan joined in '08. And when my partner and I split in '09, Dan stayed with him and then consequently joined me about 18 months later. And so we started hiring salespeople. But then after Dan in 2011, we hired some other salespeople, and it didn't work out that well.
Mm.
And what I learned, a really valuable lesson, is that if you're going to hire salespeople and you're going to pay them, then it's your responsibility to create a sales infrastructure, a sales process with all the processes and procedures required to make them successful. And after going through, I always call it the mind reading strategy, which is a failed strategy. Right? How
Right.
can't you figure this out? Just read my mind. In 2012, we put a very detailed sales process in place called the Dakota Way, which I just finished our book on that. We've lived it for 2 businesses ever since 2012. It's worked kind of magically, if you will. And it seems very sort of common sense oriented, and just put a sales process in place, make it very specific, have very clear check-ins, and you can really scale a business if you do that properly.
You learned a hard lesson that a lot of the CEOs I work with have learned, which is yes, salespeople cannot read your mind. I wish they could,
Right.
but they can't. And it is hard in the beginning. You got lucky, you got one really great sales guy, right? And you're thinking, oh, we'll just hire some more, right? Why can't we just find a bunch more like Dan, But unfortunately, it doesn't really work like that. And they can't read your mind. And what you said is so important for everyone who's listening. It's that structure, right? That you build for the salespeople to have success. That's so important, right? Because they want to have success too. They don't want to come in and fumble around and not know what to do and not know whether they're doing a good job or not doing a good job, right? So it's super important to get that structure in place. And I think it's something that's missed in the early days, but believe it or not, even some of the companies that I've seen that are 10 years in, they still don't have enough sales structure in place to let their salespeople be highly successful. And you and I both know that that's absolutely the key. So, all right, you started growing sales. You got some more salespeople. Okay, failed, tried again, got that structure built. How long did it take you to move from that, oh my gosh, we got some salespeople who don't, can't read my mind, to building the structure and then being able to hire the right people and plug them into that structure and really see it work?
It took about a year. And one comment I'll make about that, it took a year to really get things going. And the people that were there in the early days, Tim Dolan, Ryan Creighton, Andrew O'Shea, they're still with us today, Dan including. And we laugh at some of the lines, and we really developed all of our core principles from some of the stuff that we said during those time periods. And there's still some of our, there are absolutely our core principles today that we live by. So we've really stood by, they've really stood the test of time. But I will say, from a CEO perspective, I wrote a blog post on this. I think one of the greatest mistakes a CEO can make is outsourcing the sales process to a VP of sales. I think at the end of the day, sales equals revenue equals eventually profits. And the go-to-market strategy has to be owned strategically by the CEO. And they don't have to implement it, but they have to own it. Because if they're not owning it, and if you look at most venture-backed software SaaS businesses, like what we are in the second business, I think they go through at least 3 VPs of sales until they find the right one. And that's only because, like we said, like to read my mind, I hire Joe Smith and I bring Joe in. I'm like, all right, Joe, figure out the sales, go do it. And then I'm on to like the product and this and that. And all of a sudden Joe's trying to figure out, but he doesn't really know, and it's new and it's early and it's this and it's that. And so I feel very strong that the CEO has to be the owner of the sales process and then hire the VP of sales to implement the company sales process.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. In those early days, you're the one, as the CEO, you're the one who knows. And yeah, it's in your head and you've got to get it out of your head, but you're the one who knows. And so I think doing that job yourself helps cement it in your mind what it is you want this leader to do, right? So doing it yourself, documenting it, that's the hard part. I always recommend, that CEOs get, a sales assistant, an EA, somebody who can just document what they're doing so that when they're ready and they are looking for this VP or, sales head of sales, whatever the title might be, there's some documentation of what works. There's some documentation of the process. You've been doing it yourself. And then you can hire this person because you know what you're looking for. And you can train them as well because it's documented, right?
Right.
And you can move through it more. So I think that's wonderful. And at what point did you say, okay, I'm ready now to hire a sales leader?
Well, what we ended up doing is just we made Dan the head of investment sales. And then when we started, and that was in 2016. And then in 2019, we promoted Rob to the chief revenue officer of the software business. So we've been really good at promoting from within on the sales side, because basically we've trained people to follow the Dakota Way. And so to bring an outsider in to do that wouldn't make any sense, meaning it would be counter to the culture. And so we just have always promoted from within because we've trained everyone to think and act the Dakota Way. And by the way, I will say the Dakota Way is in their best interest. It's in the best interest of their career growth, money making, commissions, processes, you name it. It's all in their best interest. And I remind them, not in a very positive way, every single day. I mean, the BDRs, our business development reps, everybody, and that everything we're asking them to follow is 100% in their best interest. And if I didn't think it were in their best interest, I'd change it. So it's important to note that we're just not bringing people in to, sort of put them through a program or a process that doesn't make sense. But we really enjoy promoting from within.
Yeah. I'm guessing that it's not only in their best interest, but it's in your customer's best interest as well. And that is why it works so well for you, because they're doing what's in their best interest because they also know that is the best interest of their customer. And that's really how we win, right? And I love that you're hiring people with the thought that we will promote from within. We will teach them how to do this. It will work for them. They'll grow and develop, and then we'll have more people who can do a better job, and we can promote within. I really love that. And that's just not happening in a lot of places. So I don't know if you know that that's kind of unusual.
Yeah, you know what? It just, because we're so ardent to the Dakota Way and the sales process, and we finish each other's sentences because we have 11 core principles, and it just makes sense. And you kind of see who, and then you want to be able to give people upward mobility. Was we always say one of our core principles is there are no ceilings at Dakota, so everyone can grow, and we want to give everybody opportunities to grow. And it's really hard to bring someone in who has a different philosophy or is trained that might not be as disciplined. I mean, we have in our software business, we have 10 sales meetings a week, 7:45 daily check-in, a 5 o'clock check-in, all 5 days a week. It's very structured. They each one lasts 11 minutes, one lasts 3. So, and most people are like, wow, that's micromanaging. That must be hard. And everyone says those are their favorite meetings of the day.
Yeah, that is absolutely not micromanaging when you're getting together to talk about your success, right? How you're going to be successful that day and cheer each other on. I mean, that's definitely not micromanaging. Well, I'm sure a lot of our listeners are going to want to read the book, The Dakota Way. So we're definitely going to put that in the show notes. I have a question about AI for you. I've started to ask this a lot in the podcast because I'm really curious how companies are starting to bring AI into sales. So are you bringing it in, and how are your sellers using it?
So think about AI in terms of a product, right? So for instance, Salesforce, one of the best platforms on the planet, the best reporting tool for what's inside of Salesforce in the business, right? So you can create quick reports. The problem is our customers and our salespeople, they're not impossible to build, but it takes a little knowledge of how to create the report and the filters. But if you have Copilot and you have Dakota Copilot, you can just type in the prompt, create me a report for all family offices in Boston where the chief investment officer went to Villanova. And then it just, boom, creates a report for you. So it actually, AI for us is going to allow us to make our product far, far easier to use because you'll be able to use natural language to query the actual product.
Yeah, just such a huge time saver. And I think one of the things that AI is really good at is doing research for us, right? Taking all of our data and bringing it into one place for us, something that we don't do very well as humans on our own. We got a lot of data floating around in all of our companies that we're not using, right? So I love having the AI do the work for us. Do your individual sellers use AI in different ways that you can share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to querying the database, they can also go in and they can query around basically similar type investors, if you will. So we can go query if you're going into New York and you just want to call on, there's something called an RIA, which is essentially an independent wealth management firm that has billions of dollars under management. And we can query exactly what their investment interests are. And then you can say, okay, what would be a similar firm to XYZ firm in Midtown Manhattan? And then it'll give you a list of those similar firms that have similar investment buying or investing habits, which would be good candidates for your investment strategy. So that's just another example of being able to find similar type businesses that already fit your product strategy.
That sounds like it's very useful. And I'm curious, because your business is so specific, what does that outreach look like? How do your salespeople start the conversation? Have the companies they're calling on heard of you, and they're kind of, happy that somebody called, or do they totally not know you and it's unexpected and they, have to start from scratch? Tell me a little bit about the approach.
So now you're getting into the heartbeat of what I believe a sales organization does on a daily basis. A lot of people don't believe in this, and it's called cold outreach. And I know you know what that term means, so I'm not saying that you don't, but it scares a lot of people. And there's a lot of different opinions on whether you want to do cold outreach or not, or whether it works, or is it worth it or not. And we've built 2 businesses from scratch using cold outreach. So it works like a charm. But it's also very difficult conceptually to get people who graduated from college, worked really hard, and they say, so let me get this straight. You want me to send 25 emails a day for the rest of my life, booking emails with people I've never met or booking meetings with people I've never met before. And only 2 of them are going to get back to me on a daily basis if I'm lucky. And I say, yep, that's what I'm asking. And so we use cold outreach. We focus on cities. So our team or each individual salesperson always has 5 cities they're scheduling for. And I get that it's pedestrian, and I tell them it's a very pedestrian first aspect of the job.
Mm-hmm.
The good news is once you book the meetings and then you go to the city to do the meetings, you take this investment strategy and you have to be a master messenger, because you have to take a very complex investment story and bring it to life in a simple way. The hardest thing in life is to tell a story of a complex, whatever it might be, a complex product, and then simplify it so somebody can get it very quickly. And so that's how we go about it. It's all cold outreach. If you think Dakota, what I want you to think is they are cold outreach, and we sell a cold outreach database to over 5,000 fundraisers they use every day, and we believe in it, and it works beautifully if done right. Now, secret to that is the email has to be written in a certain way, and we don't compromise on the email. So there's 3 segments to an email. There's a subject line, there's a very brief body, which is 1 or 2 sentences max, and there's a clear call to action. I'll be in Boston on November 14th. Can you meet at 3:00? That's how you close out, right? And most people are wishy-washy, or they have very long paragraphs. So to do cold outreach properly, it's all about the email.
Yeah. And, it has to be, like you said, something that they're interested in that moment. So you may send 25 and you get 2, but you keep after those people, because at some point in their future, they may be the 2, right?
100%.
So we don't ever give up. We keep reaching out to them with really fantastic messaging. And I'm just curious, are your sellers using any AI to hone their messages or improve their messages at all?
There's definitely been some of that, but really it's a work of art. So, and the reason I say that is because as a CEO, our customers, I'll ask my customers, I said, send me the email you're sending. They'll be, Gui, we're not getting results. I said, please send me your email. They'll send me the email. I'll sit down for 10 minutes and I'll rewrite it for them. I'll take out 80% of the words,
Yes.
I'll reposition everything. And so AI really can't do that. You can do it in a somewhat general way. I've seen that, and that's okay. We want to be authentic as a firm, right? We work in a very authentic, trust-based business, right? Investing is a trust-based business. You might hear about the Bernie Madoffs and some of the fraud stuff, but we work in a trust-based business, and everybody can smell a automated email or something that's not authentic or real. Yeah. And then they'll never take you seriously. So there's no mass emails. Everything's one-off. And I think really importantly, you have to believe in your strategy that the person that you're asking for the meeting just needs to know about you, because that's their job. They're selecting investments for their whatever pool of capital they're managing to put that capital to work. And you have to believe your strategy is good and it's worthy of them at least knowing about, because that's the whole goal, right? You just want to get as many people knowing about who you are and what you do. So when the time's right, when they want to invest, they know that you're out there. And with 200 requests a day, which our prospects are getting, 200 emails a day from people like us, to break through that noise, you have to have a really good email.
You got to stand out. Absolutely. And you have to believe, right? And it sounds like what you're doing is remarkable in that respect, because you've got a great team who believes what you believe, and they're out there knowing that the people they're contacting will benefit greatly from what they have to offer. It's the kind of place I'd want to work, right?
No, it's a lot of fun, and it's just, listen, it's the hard stuff, because it's emotional. There's rejection.
Yeah.
And it's just those 2 things, right? And people are like, did I really sign up for this to go to college and just to get rejected all day long? But then what ends up happening is you do the meetings, and then you start to feel the feeling. And so what I tell everybody, look, you're just a white email with black letters and numbers. Okay, that's all when you get that email, or the person gets the email. But then you get in the meeting, and they're going to love you, right? Yeah. So just do the hard work to get the meetings, and you're going to have a beautiful career.
Right. You get those meetings, you get to connect with people, you get to understand them, you get to see how you're going to make their life better in whatever way, right? And that's really the part of selling that I love as well. It's just that connecting and helping others. Well, gosh, I could talk to you all day, but I know we're going to run out of time here at some point. So I wanted to ask you a couple of questions that I ask at the end of every show that I do, so that you can share some things that you're interested in and that work for you with our listeners as well. So the first question is, what's a book that you think every CEO should read?
Gosh, a book that so the Amazon management system.
Oh, I haven't heard that one yet. Okay.
So, and you might say, why? Because Jeff Bezos built that company with the clearest intent imaginable, all based on core principles that he followed. And it's a very special book. And I'd say it's required reading for a CEO. It's very simple, but written by an Amazon employee.
Wow. Awesome. Well, I'm going to have to add that to my list because I haven't read that one yet. All right. Next question. What's a podcast that you listen to? Not necessarily a business podcast, but because it makes you think differently.
Chris Lochhead, Category Pirates. So Chris Lochhead, Category Pirates. He's a complete character, but he's a marketing genius. And his team, it's just not Chris. He's a 3-person team. Complete genius around category creation. So the goal of any product in any business is to create a category of one. And he's the genius behind that message. Very special guy, total character. Love listening to him, love reading his work.
I can't wait to listen to that one now. That's another one that I haven't heard of before. So that's excellent. I'm really getting some good ones today. All right. And then last question. What do you believe it is that CEOs need to do to win in this marketplace?
They need to treat their people kindly.
Yeah.
And you say, well, why is that? Because every business is a people business. And you want to bring in great people and you want them to stay forever. And you want them to learn how to get a job done and take it from 30 hours to 10 hours to 30 minutes to 10 minutes to 5 minutes and build institutional knowledge, build relationships with your customers. And you do that because you treat them kindly. And if you do that, and that's the ultimate win. But I just don't believe everyone, necessarily believes that. I think a lot of people believe they can say whatever they want to people. And that causes people to leave companies, the good people. And I think that's the deal. And from there, everything else is possible. I mean, I get AI, I get the big thinking, everything, but it's still a people business and you have to treat people with kindness.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And people talk about customer experience all the time today. And really, you can't talk about customer experience without talking about employee experience, because that's where it starts, right? If you're kind to your employees and they want to stay and they grow and learn with you, right? And they're going to treat your customers like gold then. They're going to treat your customers the way you treat them. And that's what gives customers a great experience. It just starts right there at the employee level.
Couldn't say it any better myself, right? 1A is our teammates, 1B are our customers, and for that reason.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, Guy, thank you so much for your time today. It's been such a pleasure talking with you and learning from you. I can't wait to read The Dakota Way. This is a book that we're going to get onto the show notes again for everyone. And sounds like you have really built an amazing company and you're doing great things. So thank you so much.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it.
If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.